Hello, friends. I'm going to attempt to make this short and sweet. And I mean that I've got a buzzer on myself so that 30 minutes, I'm done. So the reason I'm on here is all over Facebook today was let me just bring it up, the Substack about how much UVA's DEI or DIE, DIE as I call it is, and now this is an astronomical amount of money to be spending on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what worries me is, can people have the conversation about what diversity, equity, and inclusion is and is not? Because you can be angry about it all day long, but if you don't know what's wrong with diversity, right? Well, just roll. But I mean, this to be paying $500,000 to these people is normal to me to educate. I mean, this is not, and then I would refer you to figure out what your individual school division, since they're all having budget crises, are spending, and not on our children, is where I would deflect, because this going on in colleges, since the 60s at least, these change agents being inserted, which goes so far back, and we can talk about the history of all that, is that this has been going on since the 60s. All of these universities, especially UVA, Yale, the main ones, but now it's embedded everywhere. Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech has like the layered globalist farming. Disgusting. JMU is a comprehensive sex ed school. Longwood, which pumps out teachers, has been doing this forever. Is that this is not new. Did not come from it's not just the schools, but it's businesses. Yes, I would be unable to go out into the workforce, I can't even say that without cringing. Is that my husband had to go through it at his chemical plant, and he's able to just come home and laugh about it, which of course enrages me. But is that this understanding what diversity, equity, and inclusion is? Hey, Mark. The military. Yeah, the military is doing it. I don't know if you saw the newest. My husband, I just happened to have my Marine Corps. My husband's prior service Marine Corps, and what's going on in the Lejeune and what the Marines just put out with the flag. I mean, it's just, if we were to have all these millions of people they've let into our nation and have war on our own turf, if you don't think that what they've done to the military is part of it, wake up, because it is. But is that people have to understand how long this has been going on. This is very, very not new. In the academia field. It's been going on, 68, 69 seems to be the trigger point for most of us that do this for a living. But is that this started to, the OG, the original education warriors across both party lines, Phyllis Schlafly, Charlotte Iserbyt, Barbara Morris. That's what I do all day long, is read all this amazing stuff that they wrote years and years and years ago. That'll blow your head off. This did not come. We did not arrive to get out. Sorry. We did not arrive here miraculously, at light speed after COVID. Okay. Every cultural revolution has to have a trigger point, George Floyd was just the added bonus. Okay. But COVID, okay. The LGBTQ children are failing, must have out full-fledged, steam on. The historically marginalized, which now that just comes out of my mouth like nothing, but no straight white children were affected by COVID. If you go back and read all the documentations that came out. But so to understand that diversity is for us, if you tell somebody a melting pot, or whereas America's a melting pot, right? That would be equality. Diversity is not diverse. It is actually the opposite of diverse. Inclusion literally means exclusion. You're not an inclusive environment unless you have excluded all ideologies other than the critical, the radical, the sexual, all of that. Anything founded on whiteness, you must exclude. So inclusion, when you hear that, is exclusion. Now, the term inclusion for me, many years ago, one of my best friends here in Chesterfield, she was the first right out of high school or out of college to get married and have children. And her daughter had special needs in Chesterfield County. And I started to, I started to hear the word inclusion, which is special education. Like inclusive, inclusion was for the special education children, which is a completely different story, is they should be immensely irate that their terminology has been hijacked. Because when you merge these, it's Marxist. We're working, this is Marxism, race Marxism, call it what you want. Just don't call it CRT unless you can argue how it is CRT, critical. It's like James Lindsay says, is that it is praxis, is that critical race theory is not being taught, it is being done. And that's what's important. It's not to tell people, is that no, it's not being taught, it is being done systemically in every class. And I'll show you that. So the main reason I wanted, is that, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is not, these are not nothing more than Maoist struggle sessions that you have to sit through, whether you're a teacher, whether you work at a bank, whether you are in the military, whether you are working at a chemical plant, is that you must be, political correctness all the way. You must be culturally sensitive to everything, which is why it has to be resisted, is because you cannot, is that we are feeding a black hole that we can never satisfy, ever. And it will just keep getting bigger, okay? It will just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger until what does a black hole eventually do? It swallows you up. And is that you have to become knowledgeable so that when you push back, you don't get shut down by being called a racist, a homophobe, a transphobe, or whatever it is when I talk about education, I'm like, and everybody has to get to at least some kind of a point to where when somebody calls them that, no, I'm not. I don't have implicit bias. And the first thing understanding is systemic racism. Says who? Says whom? Where do you see that? Okay. Where's your proof that we have systemic racism as the foundation of everything? I'm going to need to see proof of that. And they'll say, oh, well, the suspension rates, is no, that's not systemic racism. That's called the other abhorrent practices that fall under the MTSS or the VTSS in your school system, the Virginia Tiered System and Supports, that social emotional learning, PBIS, restorative practices, trauma-informed learning, all that stuff falls under. It's like an umbrella. Is that the pilot schools, the pilot cohorts that started that, let me see. When did it would have been right when, let's see, 2004, 2005. The pilot school, I would have been right out of high school. I'm 44 years old. So what we're seeing is like the end of the children's behavior that's been so abhorrent. They taught the children to behave like this. And anybody who wants to dig into how PBS has destroyed your school nation or understand that more or anything like that. But again, I'm trying to give myself a time limit. Is that inclusion is the overarching value structure for the diverse and equitable commissar system. Okay. It's a justification not for inclusion as most people understand it, but for censorship. It's another form of censorship, inclusion, because what is not included, we've all experienced this. How is this inclusion again? How do I fit into this belonging you talk about? I don't feel like I belong. Well, it doesn't matter because you're white. Oh, you're a non-binary, you're cisgender, you're a straight white person, you're a straight white man. Oh, you definitely don't. Is that it is not inclusion because they have excluded you. Diversity is not diversity as a melting pot. Let's get as many diverse people together and love each other. That's equality. And equity is the end goal. These diversity officers are what during these education commissars that you would have heard about, they're neo-Marxists, and that's the only way to put it. Is equity is going to end, and this is where you have how it kind of like collides with when we talk about children and workforce, is that that's why our governor has never to this day uttered the word social emotional learning out of his mouth, and neither will our either side of the political aisle, is because they're both getting their sides of the bread buttered. As long as they're both getting both of their sides, is that doesn't make it okay. And that's why I do this, to bring attention to the fact that I thought our governor banned CRT on EO1, right? No, sorry. It did not. I actually have talked to a couple of the people that worked for his diversity, opportunity, and inclusion division, because that's what he changed equity to. They quit. They don't work there anymore. Is calling it for what it is. And also in this Substack, they had linked no more DEI, that people, were like, well, other schools are getting rid of it so that taxpayers don't have to pay for it. Okay, well, the money is that, one, you would have to follow up very closely to find out that if these people were actually, or if they were just shuffled into an opportunity role. Because if the Wall Street Journal is printing no more DEI at University of Florida, that means it's like, what do they report? That if you're trying to protect your children who are minors and control their education, it's a don't say gay or anti-trans or a hate trans. No, it's not. It's called Protect Innocent Children. And nothing in this bill says any of that. So if the Wall Street Journal is reporting no more DEI, it's like, remember when they said no more DEI at VMI? No. Talk to people. Ask them the questions. It's still going on because the governor checked it off his list to get some angry people who petitioned enough, because that's the only way to get anybody talking about anything for people that are elected on Parents Matter, is you have to shove it up there. But he just did that to shut these people up, make it look like it went away on the surface, but it's still there. Another comment, but before I jump down that one, is you cannot, I'm not going to subscribe to you. Universities can't expend any state or federal funds to advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion. What about local? Is where right there, I would be going local tax out. I mean, is that there's so many grants being given to these schools? Is how do they regulate that? Is who's regulating? Is that there's just entirely the University of Florida's approach is notable because it comes with the backdoor attempts to continue DEI programs under other names. Voila! I didn't even read the article. There you go. It comes with, without the backdoor attempts. So what are they saying there? Previous attempts have all had the backdoor. Okay. But I would still call BS, and I will dig that out in another day. But the reason is that this is UVA. This is classic. And I'm not belittling the guy who wrote the Substack, and I'm welcoming him to have the conversation of what the conversations that we're not having, is that diversity, equity, and inclusion. You take that, you take all the critical theories, including the pedagogy, like the sexual stuff. You take the trans stuff, you take everything that you hate, you take all of the radical sexual education, you put that into a syringe with diversity, equity, inclusion, a little sprinkling of critical race theory, all in the syringe, and you have a delivery system for all of it. How is diversity, equity, and inclusion being delivered in our public school system, government school system, and a lot of privates? Through They're not doing it. They're not telling parents in their happy booklets that we're going to have diversity, equity, and inclusion systemically embedded into every curriculum, are they? No, because that would do what? Make people mad. They're going to tell them that they're doing social emotional learning to help with belonging, to help with their social awareness. And that's the delivery system for all of this. And it's in every single, I cannot emphasize that enough, every single, from basket weaving to English, if you're not going through, especially in health, oh my God, health. And this goes to the counselors. So right here, the ASCA student standards crosswalk with learning for justice, social justice standards. So these are the school counselors, okay, who I've told everybody, opt your child out, send them an opt out and say, counselors, psychologists, it's in the Virginia Code. Boop, boop. Do not have access to my child. Do not have free roam chicken. You cannot walk up to my chicken. Nope. Send in an opt out. Just write it on a letter. Send it in tomorrow. Do not pass. Do not stop. Do not go straight to jail if you do not, as a parent. Send it in. Don't think about woulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Send it in. Do not let these people, because who's calling right now, calling parents because they've had their kids excused absence for 10 days? Social workers. That would be CPS. You do not want, they're now all mental health people. But so right here, they're telling you acceptance, respect, support, and inclusion. So the crosswalk between what that means and what they're doing, students will develop positive social identities based on their membership in multiple groups in society. Students will develop language and historical cultural knowledge that will accurately describe their membership in multiple identity groups. Right there, you have identity politics. And they're like, okay, well, so this is the American Association for School Counselors. Well, there's the Virginia's. It's like, it's not just it's not just the teachers. Is that the school counselors? Let's see if I can pull that picture up real quick. But real quick, is then you've got the social justice standard for identity. Okay, you got the social justice standard for diversity. Students will develop language and knowledge to accurately and respectfully describe how people, including themselves, are both similar to and different from each other and others in their identity groups. That's what they call effective oral and written communication skills and listening skills. If you read that, you would not know what that meant. Positive, respectful, and supportive relationships with students who are similar to them and different from them. You would not know that was students will respectfully express curiosity about the history. So you're now teaching students that they have to express curiosity about the history and lived experiences of others and will exchange ideas and beliefs in an open-minded way. That's what being positive and respectful is, that students will respectfully express curiosity about the history and lived experiences of others and will exchange ideas and beliefs in an open-minded way. Culturally aware, sensitive, and responsive. Students will examine in social, cultural, political, and historical contexts rather than in ways that are superficial or oversimplified. They're digging into this stuff. These are the counselors, guys. They're supposed to be doing what? Mental health, right? Like, what else are they? Are these kids? No wonder they can't read. They're doing so much. Is that this goes on and on. Social justice standards, action, right up. And what does empathy really mean? Okay, students will express empathy when people are excluded or mistreated because of their identities. And then you go to advocacy. Then students will recognize. So we've gone to full-blown social justice, like anti-racism, because if you are not racist, one cannot simply be not racist. You must be anti-racist, which is fighting back against systemic racism that doesn't exist. We've just accepted because they told us to. It's not there. I look for it every single day. If anything, you're racist to me. And it's not reverse racism either. Don't say that. Don't say it's reverse racism or it's whatever. It's racism. Nobody owns the term racist. But so when we talk about them even doing academic counseling, long and short-term academic and career social emotional goals, social maturity and behaviors that are appropriate to the situation and environment, right? You think they're going to teach them how to work and, go out and, it's even funny to me they even have the word academic. What does it mean? Students will plan and carry out collective action. Okay. What did Ayn Rand say? Nazism, fascism, socialism, communism, all have one thing in common. The ultimate banality of evil. Collectivism. Okay. If only thing that you know about how fascism, socialism, communism, and Nazism are all connected, collectivism. So what are they teaching? Look at the kindergarten whitewashed, brainwashed standards of learning from last year. Collectivism, sharing for the well-being of others, not for themselves. That was in kindergarten. But students will plan and carry out collective action. Boom. So that's going to be 7th and 9th grade. You're teaching them to be collective. That is the group. The group well-being is worth more than your child. Action against bias and injustice in the world, and will evaluate what strategies are most effective. Carry out. Students will plan and carry out collective action against bias and injustice in the world. There's no ifs, ands, or buts there. Does this exist? Is it really there? And I'm going to jump quickly to the reason that this is that I have so many UVA documents that are disgusting and abhorrent. But so now that we know that SEL, as I've said 100 times, is the delivery system for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how is it getting into our schools? What are these DEI office commissars doing? And it is a social emotional learning. And that's important because you have to know how UVA connects to, it's disgusting. So look this woman up, Catherine Bradshaw. She is on the board of Castle, okay? And she's a senior associate dean at the Curry School at UVA. And this is her presentation from the Social Emotional Learning Exchange in 2019, pre-COVID, okay? And so here we have our 5 competencies. Let's see. Oh, see, this is what we were talking about earlier, how it intersects with PBIS, MTSS, the VTSS. Aims related to climate. When you hear your school climate, your classroom climate, and it's the environment, it's the school safety climate is how racist or not racist your school is. How much more equity training, like culturally responsive training you need, that's your school climate. But there's a little triangle. But don't you think like this was truancy reduction? This was years ago. You think if they've been doing it this long that we wouldn't have a systemic truancy problem by now? Time to question that. But and then it takes you to this wonderful little. They have this. It's called Social Emotional Learning Exchange. And you can selexchange.castle.org, and you can break it down by the year. So this one right here, oh yeah, it's just so pretty. Let's see. You talk about the breakouts. See if I can zoom in. So this one, the point of what I just talked about was this woman. So when we really want to talk about what these DEI people are doing, and what is coming out of UVA, it is far more evil, because social emotional learning is far more evil than what people think diversity, equity, and inclusion, critical race theory. Okay, that is it. You're playing whack-a-mole. And so I wanted to have this show to encourage people to not just read what's on the surface, but to really, because I'm not trying to belittle this man who wrote this, because he digs. I loved his spreadsheet, because I do spreadsheets too. But it's obvious that, he's a higher ed person, and I know a lot of higher ed people, and I encourage higher ed people to get involved with the primary and secondary people like myself. Just like the gun people need to know why mental health and education in schools matter, is that it's all like this. And simply defunding them, that's the problem with what's going on, is that you can't simply just say, okay, we're just going to stop paying them. And even if they did stop paying them and did fire them, this problem with ideologies and frameworks and pedagogies and all of you can't remove those things from the teacher's head, from the professors, from the students, is that once these ideologies, especially when they've been doing this, Frankfurt School, okay, came over when Hitler, is that these are things that people have to know, is how long this has been done in this nation. And really focus, because I just put a Substack out, and we're on a fool's errand. Okay, if you think that you're going to write legislation to ban CRT and then applaud yourself and think schools are going to get better, they're not. If you think that we're on a fool's errand, chasing our tails, trying to save a system of education that was, in fact, prior to the Civil War, designed in America, New Harmony, in Indiana, and then was sent to the Prussian education secretary commissar, and he developed the Prussian system of education, which you can get Horace Mann. I mean, if we really, is that it was public government education was designed by the father of British socialism in Indiana prior to the Civil War, and then the Prussians developed it, and then when Horace Mann came around and developed the Prussian model, it originally come from. So how do you save an education that was literally meant to bring the downfall of a nation? You can't. There has been so much reform. You can't unreform public government schools. I have to stop saying public, because who is the public? You have the individual and you have the state. The state is run by the government. So is government education. The state, the government, designs the curriculum. The government brings in the teachers. The government designs there's no curriculum anymore, but it says what the standards are, which is Common Core. The government tells them that's why you have school board members that sit up there, and most of them have no idea what's going on, or they're like Chesterfield, they're just mouthpieces. They vote so quick, you have no idea what's going on. They're just being told what to do. That's when it becomes conscription. Is that in the freest nation in the world, do you legally have to send your children into government schools if you know they're going to destroy them? Is that what the freest nation in the world does? Especially when it's meant to bring the downfall of a nation? Is we have to start, especially in the state of Virginia, my God, us being told when I was 10 or 12, 15, that we didn't have Common Core, man, that sent this state in a spiral for not caring about education. I've gotten in so many, I'll say intellectual conversations, but adult arguments showing, yes, it is. Here you go. Jim Gilmore. No, I'm sorry. What was the other one? Bob McDonald. We've been doing the standards so long, but we will make sure they align to the Common Core national standards to get the grant money. You align with something, you have it. But we're looking at a bigger picture here. UVA pumps out, God, please go take it around. If anybody knows the gentleman that wrote this Substack, you can send him my way. Is that this woman who wrote this? You can Google. You can search. She is in some of the most frightening documents. Her name is Catherine Bradshaw, PhD, MEd. If somebody wants to write this gentleman, to to go digging into this department. I believe it is the I don't know something, but the Curry School. But she is, when I searched her name today, blown away at the documents that she was on and where she has spoken and who she is friends with and who she is talking to, and to have that be right down the road. No wonder when I went to go be on the Rob Schilling show, I was blown out of the water that I have been all over this state, and Albemarle and Charlottesville, by far the most frightening. I don't know, there's people like, yeah, you didn't know that. But I mean, by far the most frightening is that when diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you have liberal educators that have been talking about this for years, that it is the right hand. Don't look at what the left hand's doing. So I just want to challenge people that, again, I'm not trying to belittle this man's Substack, but is that let's take it deeper. Who is this? Adam. Let's take it deeper. Everybody knows who I am. You know how to find me. Let's take it deeper. Let's talk about, you want to go globalist and how UVA is entangled into the global education New World Order? Let's do it. I got it. Because we have to start acknowledging the full truth of the literal pandemic, the epidemic, which one never ending. We'll just call it's like AIDS. You can't get rid of it. Like, you may have it, you may suppress it, but right now we have AIDS education. I don't know how else to put it. Like, you can't get rid of it. Like full blown. We might get it back down to like HIV, but it'll never go away. It's the quickest analogy I could come up with. But is that, so what do we do now? We know that colleges are pumping out. I mean, you cannot hire good teachers, I would say. But the teachers have to understand that in 5 years, these kids will be on VR goggles. And that's why they're all hiring instructional aides, is that these kids are going to be on VR goggles with augmented reality. They're not going to need teachers anyway. So I tell them that all the time and they don't believe me. But the point is that there's a bigger picture to DEI. So once you have, this is UVA, this is higher education. We have to start looking at how this affects the tiniest brains, the tiniest humans. Because if they're paying that much for that, you need to start looking into your school division and see your DEI officer, because I bet you have one. And then you need to see how many people are under them. Because not only do I bet you have one, they probably have, let's see if I think I just have Chesterfields here. Hang on one second. Here it is. Oh, right here, Chesterfield. Zoom in. Where's the zoom? There it is. Director of Equity and Student Support Services. See, that's frightening because you know how many things fall under student support? Jennifer Rucker. And I cut off the bottom. So we have that in Chesterfield. So right there. Equity. We have one. And so I wonder how many people work under her. That's really because these brains, yes, college brains are getting twisted because this has been going on for a long time, guys. And because I said I wasn't going to go over it, I've already gone over. But this is more about to bring attention, not to belittle the fact that Virginia is not okay. And for anybody at this point in time, considering the administration that we received over 2 years ago, that is still under the delusion that the Virginia education system is better or has gotten any better or that anything was banned, or is that you need to wake up. And I'm going to actually not rage right now at this fact. You need to wake up and start asking the governor, Amy Gadara, J.C. Miara, Winsome Sears, people that are in social emotional learning, because I've had these conversations. I have the full chat the day 2 they took office with Elizabeth Schultz from Fairfax, who was the deputy superintendent. Full conversation. So I've had it, is that we want to talk, the destruction of our children is still raging. And somehow Republicans have just gotten complacent that since there's a red vest on a bad idea, on a bad education system, even though it's the same one that Chuck Robb started in 1982, that it's a good idea. Because we're going to lose this nation and these kids if we don't push back and push back hard. And with that, my email, parentteam6@gmail.com. That is me, us, are right there. Is that we are uniting, is that we are a unification team, is you want to know about education, you want to know what's going on specifically to your division. What I do is I research, I dig it all out of the dark corner they want to put it in, and I come and speak, put out the that signal, I will come. Because Virginia is too far behind. It is my calling. I don't charge. You get people who care together. I will come to you. Because these kids are out of time, literally out of time. We don't have time to wait. People are like, oh, we're only one term state. We don't have time for him to finish his term. He's already proven that I'm not going to slam him today, but if anything, he hasn't done what he promised. We'll just put it nicely that way. And that's the nicest thing that I can say. It's about 18 layers deeper than that. But is that diversity, equity, inclusion is like the tier 1 conversation we need to be having. And then is the one that we are having. We need to get to like tier 5. And I would be so happy with like people at least knowing what social emotional learning really is, which is like a tier 3. And then eventually we can work our way to a tier 5, which is we are at war with our own people. And that would be a, unanimous bipartisan voting in things like more mental health curriculum last year, trauma-informed care, restorative practices, bills written by creeds, unanimous bipartisan passing of those. It's astonishing. And I was down in the Senate both 2 years in a row watching these they're not even morons. Some of them are, and they're just clueless, being told what they're we're under a totalitarian dictatorship. No taxation without representation, right? None of us are represented in the House or the Senate. A couple House maybe, but we are literally under. It's time to send another Declaration of Independence to King Glenn and declare our independence from an unjust nation. Like, that's where we are if we're going to save our children. There just aren't enough people to stand up, and those who do understand just don't want to stand up. But start asking the questions. Just ask your school division, can you define diversity? What do you mean by this? What do you mean by empathy? What do you get their answers, and then contact me and we'll pick through them together, and then I'll show you your division and you can take this back to them. But they're getting away with murder, literally murder, with the amount of mental health, suicide, your kids to death, with what they're teaching them that you have no idea about. So get involved, start asking the questions. And then once you ask the questions, get in touch and let's unite this state and save these children, because that's all I care about. 100%. And on that note, I don't know, I'm going to put on my Donald Trump tiara sitting here I was worldwide with this thing. All it was my daughter's birthday party tiara that I just put back on. And so with that, I will give you my wave, and I will say tomorrow I will bring a more detailed breakdown for you guys as to all of this, but I wanted to keep it simple and sweet, but jump on today and keep the momentum going with this DEI narrative working its way around Facebook. Is that hold up, stop, don't get so angry about this. You got to take it about 10 layers deep, especially with UVA. And then we got to take it down to the little tiny brains and what's happening to them. So on that note, live free or die. And don't forget, if you want peace, you must prepare for war. Take care.